Okay, so alcohol, or ethanol, is the second most popular drug in the United States after, of course, caffeine. I've got my coffee over here. It's popular. It goes back in, quite a bit in history. There's evidence for the consumption of alcohol that goes back, close to 9,000 years. Part of that is because it's a very easy drug to generate, right? If you have a source of sugar and there is yeast that arrives on it, and initially that yeast would just come via the air. Basically, it'll start this process called fermentation. And fermentation basically is a natural process by which yeast converts sugar to both alcohol and carbon dioxide. And of course, the type of alcohol that you get will depend on the source of the sugar. So beer comes from grains, right? Wine comes from grapes, sake from rice, etc. There are other alcohols. They're what we call the toxic alcohols. Now, ethanol has two carbons, alcohol, the drinking alcohol, but methanol is actually something called wood alcohol sometimes. This is a very toxic compound. It only has one carbon, and exposure to methanol can be extremely dangerous, with significant morbidity and mortality if left untreated. And it's found in things like antifreeze and carburetor cleaner, some perfumes actually, things like that. It's also methanol, believe it or not, is added to the ethanol sold, to put in our cars to drive automobiles, and that's largely because that if the ethanol were available without any kind of toxic compound added to it, it would be technically potentially drinkable, and therefore subjected to tax, to state and federal taxes. So the methanol is added to avoid those taxes. And then there's also isopropyl alcohol, or isopropanol, which is basically rubbing alcohol, which we're all getting quite used to these days because it's in all those hand sanitizers. It's also not a very good compound to consume, but it is effective on your hands, apparently, at getting rid of viruses.